Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Mortgage Heroes Weekly Podcast. I'm Andy.
I'm Brian.
And today it is just the two of us, and we're going to talk about the buyer's world that we live in. That might sound crazy to some people. Hang on. There's a lot of evidence behind buyer's world. There's a lot of behavior and consumer behavior we're seeing emerge that would confirm that there's a buyer's world. Some economic stuff is leading that way, and I know even though despite that, there's still going to be people in the comments like, you guys are crazy. Your job is to sell loans and real estate. Of course it's a buyer's world. Look, whenever there's someone selling a house because they have to sell it, there's going to be a buyer for it. So before you start going off on me and Brian today without Will, when people are selling, you're probably not yelling at them for selling. So let's not yell at people that are buying right now. Is that okay, Brian?
That's okay.
That's a good start to the show. I don't know. I don't know, man. 2025, I thought it was going to look a lot different than it already has. So in some ways, I'm encouraged. In other ways, I'm like kind of looking with one eye going, I don't know about that yet. But okay, I'm interested. I'll listen.
Yeah, no, a lot of just uncertainty in what's going to happen or what's going to happen after this or now let's see what happens.
Well, we're going to start today with the first thing, which is that a pre-approval is not enough. So this article is coming from Realtor.com, and you supplied this one, and it's actually from the front lines, if you will. So even though we're going to reference some stuff in the article, this is kind of your everyday lived experience.
Yeah, and it's been something that I think on these last couple of weeks has just been ramping up, and I've been really pushing it on the buyers, people that I've been having conversations about buying or even just in general selling or refinancing. And what I've learned is that right now more than ever is the time to start seeing where you're at. Get prepared. And, the article says it's not enough. It sounds like it's just not enough, right? But that's just one of the pieces that goes along with the whole pie. And getting ready right now just puts you in a position to have the opportunities to move quickly in certain situations. And right now, I think that's the biggest key that we need to drive, positioning yourself for the right time, because, we've been seeing deals come up. As soon as they come up, they leave. So you have to be just positioned ready.
So one of the things I want to compliment you and Will on, and maybe even myself in a weird way, is there's two things right out the gate in this that we've talked about. Yeah. One is their comment, and the second thing is a quote. So I'm gonna read the comment and I'll state it, and then I'm gonna read the quote from the person I interviewed here. So the article says this: in the market, prospective buyers must move quickly for their offer to be considered.
Yeah.
Dude, we literally talked about that in the last episode. Mm-hmm. We've also talked about that ad nauseum in all of 2025, kind of either directly or indirectly in terms of hey, be prepared, get ready, have your stuff ready, because when you strike when the iron's hot, all these languages. And then here's the second thing, and I'm going to read this verbatim from the article. Quote from Brian Davis of Springfield, Missouri. Quote, my real estate agent set me up for success by making sure I got a fully underwritten pre-approval before I even started looking at houses. I had all my bank records and pay stubs in order. I made sure my credit was good beforehand. I was always 5 steps ahead just to make sure I was ready. When the right house finally came along, my bid got accepted.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
Haven't we been saying this?
I'm so glad you brought that up.
And they have this real example of this guy they used for the article. I'm like, dude, when people are like, oh, you guys are just selling homes and you're just schlepping loans, it's like, okay, well, Brian Davis bought a house.
Yeah.
So congratulations, Brian Davis. Shout out to Brian Davis.
They asked me earlier, hey, can you give us a little temperature of how the market is doing? And I told them people are still buying houses.
Yeah.
So 100%. It's still moving. People are still transacting. But I'm really glad you brought that up, and the way that you that they put it in the article is so vital, because of the fact that right now more than ever, it's so important to have the pre-approval pre-underwritten. And what that means is that you're sending it to the bank. The bank is taking a look at your credit, your finances, your income, and saying, okay, we already know what that looks like. Buyer guidelines, it's cleared. Now you can go find the house and know that the financing is 100% secured. Now, the advantages this gives you is that once you submit an offer, you could say, hey, I'm fully underwritten on my buyer's conditions, meaning that there is going to be minimal to no conditions on what the bank asks as far as buyer requirements. Now we're all just focused on the property. Make sure the appraisal comes in at value. Make sure that the inspection is good and there's nothing wrong with the bones of the property. And lastly, that, there isn't anything drastically impeding you from moving into the house. I think that right there is going to give you the best chances of getting into the property that you really like if other people are looking at it as well.
So here's what I'm going to say to that. you're up against this dude. Like
Yeah.
the thing
You're up
that-
against a Brian.
Yeah, the thing that you're describing as a loan officer to, how
Yeah.
you're helping clients do that and you're successfully getting people in homes. It's like we're making Brian Davises here, but then that's who you're competing with out in the market. If you're in the market and you're like, let's say behind Brian Davis and what he's done and what he's quoted as saying here, like that's who your competition is. Your competition isn't just a calculator and your approval and your affordability qualifications and the underwriting. You're up against another dude who's ready to go and like stomping at the ground, ready for that gate to fly open, and he's just off to the races. So just be aware of that. This is a real thing.
And I actually have a perfect example of a client that we literally went through this just like, I want to say in February. They're still quote unquote window shopping, but they're not in a hurry to move. They have the funds to move quickly. And their thing is that we have a very, very detailed needs list. And once we find what we need, we're definitely going to make a move on it. And I told them that's exactly why you need to get pre-approved and then underwritten already. Because now, as soon as they find the property, they don't have to do any of the financial work. They have to just literally submit the offer and get it accepted. Minimal conditions, very easy on the negotiations, and they can move a lot quicker than somebody else that has to get approved before they even submit the offer. And what we've realized when that happens is that as soon as you go and do the pre-approval and want to submit on an offer, the house is already flooded with other offers and maybe already in contract by the time that you're getting your pre-approval. So do yourself a service and not a disservice by, getting ready now so that when you want to submit the offer, you don't have to work backwards.
So I want you to tell everybody what happens if you're submitting offers. Let's say you're submitting a buyer's offer to a listing agent. It's going to present to their sellers, and all the other buyers have a underwritten approval and you don't. What do they do with your offer?
Oh, they won't even look at it. They won't even look at it. And I'm being very dead honest because they will ask, let me see the pre-approval. Can I see the proof of funds? And if you don't have those, good luck. They'll accept the offer, but good luck even it making it to the table where they actually see it.
And the other thing that may not be true in all places you're seeing this show, but it's true for us here locally, is you might end up having to do what's called a cross-qualification.
Yes.
Where even though you're approved with us, you're going to send your approval with the proof of documentation of that approval to the other side, and they're going to cross-qualify you to basically vet that you're telling the truth and that all the numbers are stacking up in the way that you were presenting them. Now, we're also on the other side of that too. Sometimes we're the cross-qualifiers, and we're asking people for their loan approval, their underwriting approval, their DU approval for short, and we're saying, send me your DU, send me all your documentation, and we're going to vet for our listing agent that is on our camp that your offer is legit too. So you have to be ready for this. This is, again, I know I'm localizing this. Yeah. It just happens a lot here in San Diego. I know that in other parts of the country that may not be a common practice, but if you're here in San Diego, and I'd say even just California, you've got to get ready for a cross-qual.
So you break up a great point. I'm glad you said that. So for sellers, the advantage of having a cross-qualification when you're selling your house is that you're able to know if the buyer is actually ready to buy the house, he's actually approved, and they're actually going to pull forward with a deal. Now, what we've seen, and unfortunately it sucks, is somebody will submit an offer, say they're approved, when they're really just pre-qualified. No income has been verified, no credit has been ran, and you're really just going on based off like, hey, this is what I more or less, what I'm working with. Now, if you're on that boat, good luck. You're literally walking on eggshells because it's going to be very, very bad times when they say, hey, your offer's not accepted, the bank's not even qualifying you. Like, what are you doing here?
There's two things I see that commonly happen when you submit an offer that does not have a DU attached to it and a full loan approval. First, it's either going to get to the bottom of the stack, and if it doesn't make the bottom of the stack, it doesn't make the stack at all. Mm-hmm. And so those are kind of the two expected outcomes you should prepare yourself for if you stop short of getting the full loan approval. And that's kind of like my ceiling point on this. But there's another. I have a tactic I want to share.
Yeah.
Not a tactic. It's kind of a
strategy.
Yeah. It's a strategy. It's more of a safeguard. I'm gonna call it a safeguard, and this is why. I know in certain parts of the country where maybe insurance is either going really high or it's getting more difficult to get at an economic cost. Some people are waiving their insurance contingencies on their offer. Please,
I've seen that.
Please do not do that. The mortgage company is still going to require you to have insurance if you're getting a loan on the purchase. So you're going to end up at an impasse if you waive your contingency on that, and then you actually are unable to get your insurance written to close the deal. You're going to be out some money. or I'm saying your whole EMD, maybe part of your earnest money deposit, or maybe the whole earnest money deposit if you fail to close. So just heed the warning.
Yeah, no, definitely. And one of the strategies right now that we're implementing, and in real estate, everything's negotiable but not guaranteed. You know, you got to get creative. You got to understand the seller's motivation. So if you know that you're buying in an area where insurance is going to be relatively very expensive compared to other areas, you maybe want to negotiate, you know, one of your tactics and say, hey, I want to buy the house, but, you know, help give me credits to pay my insurance. And that's one of the negotiations that we're in right now, where the buyer wants to buy the property. They just did a price reduction because the prior buyer couldn't get approved because of the insurance. So the turnaround there is like, okay, that's another 150 to 250, where in reality, we're used to seeing 100 or below. Now, where we found leverage is the seller needs to move quickly. They're offering credits, and we saw the opportunity. Well, if insurance is going to be an issue, we pulled the quote. It was around $350, not going to lie. Now we said, okay, well, instead of, you know, passing up on the property, why don't we ask for a credit to either get some of that paid down or all of it paid down? And you'd be surprised how sellers right now are willing to play ball because they got to offload their properties as well.
And I almost think that might even be like a domino effect, because especially if that seller's, you know, getting rid of this property and it's their primary and they're about to go buy another one, they might do that same tactic. Like so on the strategic side, like you're saying, like I'm saying, it's a safeguard. Hey, don't remove your insurance contingency.
No,
but on the tactic side, like
you're
saying, use that as a way to maybe negotiate some seller closing costs or at least a credit for it or something.
Yeah.
And that seller might also on the buy side end up being in that same boat.
100%.
So I think it's a maybe even because it's one of those common denominators where it's a problem for everyone in the market right now.
Yeah.
It's not like someone's having a problem with insurance and someone else isn't.
No.
It's like kind of
it's pretty understandable.
Everyone's
right
having some level of insurance problem. Maybe it's a little or maybe it's a lot, but I don't know anybody right now that's having zero insurance problem.
No, compared to previous years before we got into this whole fiasco with insurance is just being bonkers, nobody asked, is insurance good? You know, now you get prompted like, yo, is insurance going to go through? Can you insure the property? Like that's almost as important as like buyer's conditions or, hey, are they approved really?
But, you know, so you're right. A couple of years ago, in the Wayback Machine, because I'm an old guy, yes, like we would almost, you'd be laughed at if you were like, yeah, insurance might kill the deal. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you can get a declaration page in an hour.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Nowadays, that is not the case.
Depending on where you go.
That is not the case, man. That is not the case. So, anyways, I just wanted to share that as we're talking about, you know, we're talking about this. You know, I'm gonna close with this part with this guy Brian Davis, man. Congratulations to you. I'm super impressed with your ferocity in wanting to get ready and be like competitive even against other people in the buyer's market who are trying to buy homes, because this is honestly, I think, who everyone's up against. Because even if you aren't actually up against a guy like this, pretend that you are, and you're going to be just that much more prepared.
Yeah, and for me, just to close it out as well, is, you know, if you're looking to make a move right now in 2025, it starts, you know, 3, 6, 9 months out because of the fact that you can be in the market for more than you expect. So if you have more time, you're going to have a lot more experience, you're going to have a lot more reps, and you're going to have a better positioning of how you can negotiate to get a deal that favors you.
Yeah. Good job, Brian. Appreciate it. We're going to move on to the next article, and this one is from CNBC. Trump again calls for Fed to cut rates, says Powell's termination cannot come fast enough. You know, obviously not mincing words at this point. Before we go into some of the details of this and some opinion, I wanted to point out that we have already crossed this conversation a little bit when we were talking about there being two potential pressure points for the Fed to make corrective action on rates or them to get rid of Jerome Powell. Number one was economic pressure, and number two was political pressure.
Yeah.
Those were the two force factors. And here we're seeing kind of both. You see economic pressure on one side because of the tariff stuff, and then you see the political pressure with the president overtly saying this just last week.
Yeah, and you know, I'm no economy expert and I don't, you know exactly what's going to happen, but I have seen that inflation had a negative.
A negative CPI.
A negative, you know. So that's something that we haven't seen in I don't know how many months, and we've been talking about.
Did you say years or months?
Years and
months like 42
years. Like I don't know how you want to measure things to make it sound appealing.
We're gonna measure it in weeks. It's approximately 287 or whatever. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Also the labor market hasn't cracked, and it's, you know, fairly strong still. You know, it's still, you know, not as what we want it to be, but you know, it isn't going where expected
I
it
know,
to be.
I know. And I want to be on the side of that, Brian, but I still have to think back at the Bureau of Labor Statistics inflating job numbers last year by 880,000. Now, again, I'm not saying that that's going to continue in its nefarious ways with the new administration. It may or may not. But the employment is part of that. Overall inflation is part of that. But I think that what we're also seeing is the current president also saying overtly that the Fed's too late and they're too wrong, which we've been saying for years. And I'm not saying that to be right. I'm saying that because that's actually their posture. Their posture is reactionary all the time. A lot of people like to say, oh, the Fed controls inflation or the Fed influences inflation. They're constantly chasing it. If you have a moment of honesty and you step back and you see it, what happens first, and then the decisions they make, and then you listen to what they say, whether you believe it or not, and they say, oh, we're going to be data dependent. We're going to be data driven. We're going to see what the data says first. They're always saying they're going to react, even if they're not saying the word react. So they're tasked with keeping price controls in place. They're tasked with setting rates. But in the reality of it, you get to the bottom line of it, dude, they're always chasing and they're always reacting.
Yeah, and for buyers and sellers that don't understand exactly how the Fed works, because it's very complicated and complex, what I can say is follow the sentiment. And for the young millennials, Gen Zs, and people like me, follow the vibe. You know, what's the vibe that, these politicians are saying that Jerome Powell's out there talking about? Does he sound happy, sad, excited? The market follows sentiment, believe it or not. So if they come out and say some negative stuff, the market's probably going to be down that day. So what I can say is just stay closely to the politics, but just follow the vibes.
Yeah, don't get
don't get too technical, because you're never gonna figure that out.
No. Well, yeah, yes. Well, yes, you can understand some of the technical stuff, but I'm going to tell you a story. Last week, where we had a sunset picnic with some family and some friends, and we're on La Jolla, and I'm watching these surfers. And man, some of these surfers, they're just carving it up, like they understand the waves, they know the pulse and the timing of the wave, the market, right? And then some of these guys out there, dude, they're just trying to keep their head above water or not get drowned. They're getting collapsed by these waves when the sun's coming down, the surf's coming up, and dude, some of these guys are just getting dunked, and that's how it can be. But so to your point, Brian, stay as close as you can without getting hurt.
Yeah.
But also be honest about it. I understand that when we see things through a political lens, we see things one way or another, or even another. But the Fed's own track record will tell you and show you what I'm saying. This isn't old Uncle Andy just barking up a tree again. This is me saying, look at the Fed's own track record. And let's see, was Jerome Powell, his term ends May 2026. Okay, so we're effectively 1 year away from that. If the current president is saying that he thinks Jerome Powell should be terminated, then that means that he doesn't feel that the next 12 months there will be enough corrective action to impact the economy the way he's hoping it does, whether that's for his own benefit of looking good or the actual benefit to the public and the American society of having certain things and certain constraints unclogged and moving again. Mm-hmm. Either way, you have to look at this and go, hey, what's happening? What pieces are on the chessboard? What's it telling me? And then what do I think is going to happen next? I would be honestly a little surprised if they got rid of Jerome Powell before then. I think what's going to happen is the Fed will flinch first. They're going to make some sort of move. Jerome will stay in so that he can actually finish his entire term. And then they're going to try to put someone in that's going to be a little more favorable on the political side. That's my estimation.
I like that. What I've seen from Jerome Powell, and this is just my observation, very mellow guy. He goes up to stage, doesn't really say any crazy bombastic stuff, but there hasn't been anything from the Fed that says, "Hey, Jerome, you've really been messing this up. You kind of been it's really bad. You should probably get out of there." So I think until he actually does something where everybody's just like, "Yo, we're not on the same boat with you," then he'd get pressure from the actual Fed to get squeezed out. But until then, everybody's just kind of like, well, he hasn't really broken anything. He's at least through some people's point of views, or depending on how you look at it, he's just gone on there, been very mellow and very controlled in his emotions of how he delivers messages.
And I don't know that he's entirely.
And I'm not saying, oh my God, he's crushing. He's doing a phenomenal job.
No, of course. I don't think that. like, look, when President Trump's like, this would be a great time for him to do this and he could do that and he totally clean up his image. I don't think Jerome Powell cares about his image.
And that's my point. That's what I'm saying. He's not there to please anybody. He's not there to say, okay, Donald Trump, I got to make good with you. No.
At the same time, though, behind closed doors, there's pressure points, no matter the administration. And this is kind of why I made the point about the Fed's track record. They're always chasing whatever they're chasing in the market. They did that when the financial collapse happened in 08-09. Obama was president. Yeah. And then you had Trump after Obama. Then you got Biden. And then you got Trump again. And so whether it's Democrat or Republican, the Fed's always reacting to this stuff. And to a lesser degree, they may care about their public perception or not, but their goal, number one, is function. It's not how they look. It's not how they sound all the time. They have to sound like they're confident or they're secure about some things because you don't want to roil the markets by saying the wrong thing or let's say conveying the wrong level of confidence, but not in an egotistical kind of way, like in an understanding my role in the room kind of way and in the economy at large kind of way. And I won't go down the entire other path of like, why do we need the Fed anyways? But I have some feelings about that. My point, I think, in saying this too, is that I would be surprised if they removed him and put someone else in advance of his termination or the end of his term. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. The end of his term in May of 2026. I think we're going to be okay between now and then if they have 1 or 2 quarter point rate reductions over the next 12 months. I also think we're primed for that, especially if we're going to cut out waste and then recapture dollars that have maybe, let's say, been siphoning out of our funnel of revenue as a country. I think that there's room to fulfill the argument that's being made that they should reduce rates.
Yeah, and just, closing thoughts for me, for people at home that, don't understand this and just constantly see the Fed this, the Fed that, I invite you to, search a local podcast, search a local, news station that is actually, or not news station, but a local realtor or a local professional that's actually, giving you information that you trust or that you can follow or that you kind of align with, because that's going to be the easiest way for you to understand, digest this information in a way that you're able to then, take that and do something with it rather than just hear headline after headline after headline. Take the information, try to, put a strategy behind it and really understand in a way that makes sense in your life.
And last thing for me is just remember that this is within the context of everything that's happening. It's not just an isolated thing and then, this is the only thing happening in our economic world, then everything else is going to have to bow its knee to it. But it's not that way. But it is connected directly to a lot of things that cost us money when it comes to credit cards, home equity line of credits, auto loans, things like that, where the lower the rate is, the more, I'll say, affordable it is to borrow money from the institutions that we do that from. So mortgage rates are completely different, even though the mortgage market has got one eye always open on the Fed over here and what they're doing, what they're saying. But I think that if you want to learn more about the Fed, there's a lot of research online. There's a lot of really great economic resources that you can just read kind of at leisure, I'll say. That sounds really weird to say, right? At leisure. But read at leisure and have a better understanding of what their actual impact is. And then everything's going to be fine. I promise. Even though I'm ranting, everything's going to be fine. All right?
It's okay. We're good.
We're good.
Everything's fine.
Deep breath. And next article. So today, now we're going to talk about how Gen Z will write new rules for home buying. I feel like they're already doing it. Yeah. Now, this is from Cotality. Now, I am announcing today on the show that CoreLogic has a brand new name. It's Cotality. I wish Will was here so he could make fun of me. You can do double the making fun of me because I promised you guys I'd only pull one article from CoreLogic per quarter.
I'm like, Andy, you could change the name. It's still the same thing.
I shouldn't have told you. I probably shouldn't have told you it was CoreLogic.
No,
right?
We would have been like, oh, this one's new. What's this?
And this week, also from Cotality.
And Andy, you're like this.
Just a graphs and charts show. No, so I guess CoreLogic is Cotality now. I don't know the backstory. It's not important for what we got to talk about.
It's better for branding purposes. Cotality sounds nicer.
Okay, fine. Whatever.
Like CoreLogic's like, ooh, Cotality? Okay, I can get behind Cotality.
I guess it sounds less nerdy. I don't know that I help it at all.
And the connotation on that is a lot more pleasing.
All right. Well, we're talking about Gen Z. So, Brian, this directly is going to be mostly you pulling the weight here. Look, Gen Z, we already know. And millennials, to being forced to look at alternative ways to buy a house. They're looking at creative strategies to doing house hacking. And they are, let's say, I don't want to say they're more fiscally savvy. I want to say that they're actually becoming more fiscally savvy early in the process, but by digital means where they're absorbing like hungry hippos, like, ooh, learn that, take that, share this, eat this up, and then consume all this information and then take positive steps in the right direction. And that is different than seeking the advisor first, and the advisor shares all that with you, like some of us old guys used to do.
So I agree 100%. And just in the 8 years that I've been in the industry, the conversations I have with younger buyers have changed drastically. Before, it used to be that, yes, we would sit there and let them know everything, and they'd look at us like, what is this person saying? Now it's completely changed. They come with question after question after question after this and that and this, and I always ask, where did you find that out? That's a very good question. TikTok, social media, Instagram. My buddy did this. I have friends that are doing this out of state. So the resources and the ability to tap into these resources has dynamically changed for everybody now. But these millennials, these Gen Zers, see that as opportunities. And generations before didn't have all these outs. Now we have outs and ins and different ways to be able to buy real estate, invest, or even just live.
So I feel like one of the cultural behavior, I don't know if it's cultural behavior or both, but one of the changes has been, it used to be like, hey, there's a bunch of stuff I don't know about. Tell me about it, and then I can do the next thing.
Yes.
Now they're coming in and going, hey, I know about it. Help me do the next thing.
Yes.
Right, like right away. Like, help me get to the thing, because now I know I need you, not in a gatekeeper way, but it's I can't go do this on my own.
Yes.
So now I need you, but I already know all this stuff. So broadly, I think, and we even have to go upstream one more step from that. The reason they come prepared like that is because they put in their own work, but they're putting in their own work because the information is out there. It's people that are doing shows. It's young guys like you that are doing information Q&As, and you're sharing case studies on TikTok and Instagram and even on YouTube. And it's like that, because that information is available, that like hunger and that appetite for learning is being sought after by the internet first and most. So they're going there to get the most amount of information, and they're getting it first before they even come to you.
I agree with that 100%. And they see it so many times that it almost becomes easy to do. It's easy to take action.
Familiar at that point.
Right? Where I feel like before there was so much gatekeepers, there was so much naysayers that before you even had the idea and wanted to pull the trigger, you already had all this negativity and people bringing you down why it's not going to work. Now you can go and ask your family for feedback. They say no. You could go to social media and find 1,000 people that did it, or doing it, or are saying why you should do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's actually going to be an advantage, because the amount of information that's available now is just like so plentiful that it really does just become choice at that point. Not that the amount. Sorry, I should rephrase that. It's not that there's more information now than there was before. It's that the accessibility to the information and the volume of the acquisition of the information because of digital media has kind of scaled it. So it's like it's all the same kind of stuff. There are some things that change in mortgage and real estate. It's mostly
innovation stuff,
evidenced in technological innovation, but also buyer and buy and hold behavior that's changed too. Like the whole house hacking part and renting rooms, or buying a duplex and renting out living in one and renting out the other one. Like, yeah, people have done that forever, but the speed and the multiplication at which people are trying to do that now at a younger age, they're more apropos to it. They're more interested in it. They're ready for that because, like, oh, I'm seeking cash flow options, not just a place to rest my head at night.
Yeah, and and I appreciate that. When I talk to clients that have good questions, have their Rolodex of concerns, and they're prepared with the information that they want answers on. That keeps us on our industry honest, Andy, because a lot of people that aren't constantly relearning new techniques or updating their way of doing things, implementing new strategies, they're going to keep feeding the same old things that, maybe in the past worked, but now somebody could say, hey, that doesn't apply. I read this, and that, and now you're not connecting with a potential client that you can help out.
Yeah, it's being solution focused, I think,
100%.
but being tenacious about it. Like there's a certain and I chose tenacious versus aggressive because it's not being aggressive about it. Being belligerent, but it's like being tenacious. Like I'm in hot pursuit of the thing. And even if I have to change or modify or adapt a little bit to have it, I will. I'll bring a roommate in. I'll figure out the affordability problem. I can get a second part-time job, or I can, work at night or whatever to make ends meet. I'll work on my credit. I'll save some money. I'll do some sort of creative financing. I think the willingness, I think, is what I'm saying is representative as a common denominator across across Gen Z and millennials too.
100%. And I think that, it just goes to show that, nowadays there's so many other ways to skin the cat in sense of like, okay, I'm going to take this big payment on. I have one job. That might not cut it, but I have, I could start this little side hustle. I could work on this on the weekends. I could take on different things that is going to help me kind of bridge the difference, but then also have other people that think similar and can also join the, that same ship with you. But in contrary, I think before you didn't have that much accessibility to be able to work 2-3 jobs because it was more of a nuclear family that, hey, one of them was at the bread earner. They're out, bringing in the money for the family, where the other one's nurturing the family and the home. But nowadays, we see that it's almost like it's intertwined. Everything's worked together. You don't have that same way of living like we did before. Therefore, it opens so much more opportunities and accessibility for you to be able to live in a creative way or in a different way that other people did before.
Yeah, and at this point, I especially when it comes to the affordability problem matched with the willingness to try to work it out or figure it out some way to get across the finish line, it's almost becoming so much more of a wide trend that it's almost, maybe this will be true later. This might be premature for me to say this, but it might almost be what they're marked by. Like, oh, this generation is this way, and this generation is that way. Like, I can honestly see in the future, people look back and go, yeah, Gen Z, they were marked like figuring it out no matter what it had to look like.
It's like the baby boomers. They just baby boomed.
Right. Yeah, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, and I don't want to conflate it and make too much out of it, but it would not surprise me if 5, 10, 15 years down the road, when now you're old too, then we go back and go, shoot, yeah, they really just were tenacious about it, and they were not willing to just accept the normal route to get to the end.
And we look back and say, remember when that trend started?
Yeah.
And then now 100%. It's the way of doing it.
Yeah, because
it's a norm.
Because, again, being honest about the situation at hand, they're all in the same boat, bro. Like, unless there's the outliers that are making the 6 figures right out of college, or they're making it right out of high school, or they're doing something that's unique, that's affording them the ability to buy on their own, most are in the same boat where you got to tie rafts and you got to figure out a way to collectively get the thing done versus just doing it on your own as the ways of the past used to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think affordability is a driver of all, or lack of affordability is a big driver there, but the ingenuity and the creative, I think, is really
definitely.
You know what's funny, and I haven't thought about him in a long time, but remember Jason? I won't say his last name. Remember Jason? He's one of our VA clients, and he sold sneakers.
Oh yeah. I just spoke to him not too long ago.
Dude,
shout out Jason.
Yeah. Okay. So
Congrats, bro.
Jason, we see you, man. We see you.
No, definitely. Like, he is a prime example of
that's
what we just kind of explained.
That's what I'm saying. He's the thing. He's like, yeah, I have this primary thing, but I love sneakers.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna buy and sell sneakers. And he's like bought and sold sneakers up the chain, and now he's
it's an actual business, and bought multiple houses, exited, and all while staying in.
That's what I'm talking about.
In a solid job. Still, all doing it 9 to 5, basically.
I just thought about that right now.
Big shout out to Jason. If you're listening to this, shoot me a message, bro. We appreciate you. You know who you are.
Jason, you gotta DM us, man, or shoot us a text, man. We miss seeing you and talking to you around here. But
would be nice
he's a great example,
and bring him in and share their story, because that's someone that's actually doing it, and it's literally like
let's do it.
Image.
Even if we have to get Jason by Zoom, let's commit to have him talk about that. I mean, it's right in the it's just right at the epicenter of this whole topic.
And talk about him and his wife as well doing that together. I mean, there's just so much to unpack, Jason.
and so that even in itself, I'm saying it's kind of the example that's being described in the article is they're working together to make it work, but in their case, he actually is kind of that and the outlier.
Yeah.
It was him and his wife, and it wasn't a bunch of other people in their friend group that were stitching it together. It was like the two of them were able to do that. That means the two of you are going to be able to do that too. And if you have to go dip in to get the friend group or family group as well, fine, so be it. But that's a great example right out the gate.
Big kudos to him sticking through it and honestly following the vision. I mean, props to you, man. It's paying off.
Awesome. Brian, we're going to close out today talking about the supplemental tax bill here in the county of San Diego. This is more of an informative piece because we're at that time of the year. We just passed the tax deadline with the IRS. And so this is also a time for us to talk about tax-related issues. So we're going to do this kind of quickly because I want it to mostly be informative. There's not a lot of opinion here.
I have a example. Literally, I got a call this last week from one of my clients. He purchased back in 2022. And he gave me a call. He's like, hey, my mortgage payment went up. And then we started dissecting everything. Insurance didn't change. Okay, obviously your loan didn't change. That's 30 years fixed. But what we realized is that his property taxes got reassessed. And when that happens, obviously your property taxes go up, and somehow, somewhere, like, it needs to get paid. So what we notice is that, every so often when you purchase your house some years down the line, and I'm not sure exactly how many years down the line, but they'll do a reassessment, and I'll verify that. They'll do a reassessment of the property because, the previous owners had a different value from what you purchased. So once that value is now verified and updated, there's going to be a new, fee that comes along with it. So that's one of the reasons that, payments are increasing.
Yeah. So we're gonna explain to people who don't know what the supplemental property tax bill is, and this is when someone buys a home or they make major upgrades or additions or increase the footprint of the home. The county assessor reevaluates the assessment. This is not an appraisal; it's their assessment of the property's value. Now, that new assessed value is usually higher than what you had either had on your property before you built extra, or at the time that the old seller sold to you and transferred title to you. So what it's basically is like a catch-up bill.
Yeah.
Because let's say in this example, I bought a house in 1990. Brian buys it from me in 2025. Well, my tax rate from 1990 is the closing tax rate at the time he closes. But then in 2025, they're going to, a couple weeks or a couple months later, the county tax assessors go, oh, we see here that that house was sold. We need to reassess it. So they're going to reassess it in the current year's assessed value, which is going to be much higher than back in 1990 when I had bought that house. That results in the supplemental tax bill being sent to Brian that you either have to pay out of pocket or one time, and then it eventually will make its way into your escrow fund when you're making your mortgage plus taxes and insurance together in every monthly payments. But you need to be aware that this is going to happen. The amount of your county taxes at closing is based on the seller's tax rate. Your reassessed tax rate will show up weeks or months later, and we're in a season right now where these supplemental tax bills are going out because the county has a long line of them to get to. So if you're closing in April 2025, expect by May, June, maybe even July, possibly longer, depending on volume, you're going to get a supplemental tax bill in the mail.
So, Andy, basically to cut it short, if you received a green bill by the property tax office, you have to pay it. And if you're not sure how you should pay it, contact your local loan officer and have them explain what your options are. You have an extra account. Sometimes that's able to cover it, but you are 100% responsible for it. Make sure you get that paid.
Yeah. Expect that it's going to come in the mail and also pay it. So basically, plan for it. Start saving some money. Stash it aside because you're going to end up paying that tax bill, and then it'll eventually be folded into your impound account when you're making the payment.
And it never fails that we always equip our clients with that information and let them know, hey, down the line, you're going to give me a call. You're going to say, hey, Brian, what is this bill for? They're charging me X amount. And we're going to remember the conversation and say, hey, remember they're going to send you that supplemental one-time payment. You have to take care of it. That's what it is.
And I should probably, I'm thinking about wrapping up, and I'm thinking I should probably clarify my statement a little bit. Like when we close a loan for somebody, we're estimating what the property tax bill will be. It's not based on the seller's actual tax bill. The seller's tax rate of 1% plus, meaning the local bond measures and the other things that are baked into the tax, that's the calculatable part based on your new sales price. So that amount that's being received in your escrow is not always going to just be the seller's. So I wanted to clarify that. I'm sorry. I realized I said that confusing earlier. So when we were closing your loan, your tax amount is going to be our estimate based off the percentage of tax being paid connected to that property, not the seller's actual total.
Yeah. And one last closing thought. If you inherited a property or your parents are signing over a property to you, be very cautious that that's going to trigger a reassessment. Just because you didn't buy it, you're changing ownerships, and therefore that triggers a reassessment as well.
There's a way to reassess basis at time of death when someone dies, and you earn a property. When you earn a property, when you inherit a property.
Whoa.
So there's a couple of other scenarios that would generate a supplemental tax bill, but broadly, the majority of the times is you bought a house in 2024 or you're buying a house in 2025, that bill's going to show up. You can always call Brian or Will, and you can talk to our loan officer if we've done your loan. If not, reach out to your company that's collecting your payment, the mortgage servicer, talk to them about it, and make sure that moving forward, they're going to collect the right tax amount so that you don't have additional bills coming in for any shortage or deficiencies.
That's right.
So, Brian, Brian, what was your favorite part of the show today?
What was my favorite part of the show? I honestly had the first 2 articles, definitely not the third.
Wow. All right.
Just totally kidding. I honestly, every article was actually my favorite because I feel that there was a lot to pull from in the sense that you can give examples of real life things that are happening, strategies, and just things that they can implement on their everyday shopping experience, selling experience, refining experience. I think nowadays more than ever, it's more important to talk about actions, things that they need to be doing, because as we see, things are moving fairly quickly, and if you're caught behind paralyzed by analyzing, then you're not going to get anything done.
Analysis paralysis.
There it is. Thank you.
Hey, shout out to my guy Brian Davis, who I don't even know.
I was like this.
That's my guy.
I thought you were talking about me.
Shout out to my guy Brian Davis, not Landero. Sorry, Brian. You know what? My favorite part of the show today is you. Thanks for being here.
Of course.
Sorry that we're missing you today, Will. No, but the 2 Brians today, you and Brian Davis in the article, who's like setting this standard of like, hey man, this is what it takes to get in the house. He was committed and dedicated, and like, I'm gonna make this happen. And I think just the awareness of knowing that's who you're competing with. That's who we're out in the market contending with right there.
Be like Brian. Be 5 steps ahead.
5 steps ahead.
Be like Brian.
5 steps ahead, Brian. I think that's what we're going to close with.
Yeah.
I should have called the show that, but I already pre-picked our title, so it is a buyer's world in 2025. Sorry if you don't like that. You can go yell at some sellers. All right.
Sure.
Remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, send this to someone you know and love to help them win in mortgage and real estate. Will, Brian, and myself will be back again next week with another great show. We'll see you then. Later.
See you guys.
If you enjoyed this video and you want more of our content, subscribe here. And if you'd like to watch another video right now, click here.